Welcome to the Fandom Podcast Network special presentation of Time Warp 1984 November. We're celebrating the 40th anniversary of movies and pop culture. My name is Kevin, and I'd like to welcome, of course, my co-host for Time Warp here. With me, as always, is the co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's going on, buddy?
I have been living in a lead line room and I haven't slept for a week just to get ready for this podcast.
Lead line room. Don't know what that reference is.
A little something with to do with Comet, protecting you from comets.
Oh, right. Okay, gotcha. Well, you know what? Someone that probably got that reference and I didn't because it went over my dumb head is the queen of movie foo, Lacee Adderhold. Welcome, Lacee. Welcome back.
Oh, hello. Welcome. Oh, I need to move my blanket. Otherwise, I wash out with my super paleness.
Well, guys, we are kind of starting to wrap up the year of 1984 and its 40th anniversary. We got the month of November. Some interesting movies came out this month. Of course, we'll talk about that towards the end of the show, but we got some other pop culture and stuff. Does it feel like it's at the end of the year, Kyle, of 84? I mean, where are you feeling right now?
A little bit, and we talked about this the last episode too, because this was such a different time in how they put out movies. We're definitely past the summer blockbusters, but what's interesting here is we've got several cult classics in this bunch and a true tentpole franchise getting birthed in this month. And so it's very interesting because it's like at the time you're not thinking much about it, but then you look back on it and it's like there's a lot of, I don't want to say super heavyweights in this month, but there's a lot of known things in this month compared to like the last month we just did.
Yeah, I have a big question about one of these tentpole films that I think you're referring to and why it was released in November and not the month before. Lacee, 1984, we're wrapping things up here. How you riding this so far?
I'm feeling like with this month, with a couple of exceptions, we're scraping like the end of the bottom of the like. This is not a super great month. Like there's a couple of exceptions, but the offerings this month were not terribly amazing.
We'll touch on that.
A lot of the things that might have been put out, earlier in the year, they kind of pushed these back because they were like, well, this is better. We'll put this out first. And then this is like, well, it's November, guys. We got to put them out sometime or we're going to lose money on them.
Well, here's your Time Warp host if you're watching the video here at the palatial estates of Lacee's magnificent video collection there. That was a fun day there, so check that out. But you know what? We do have some other Time Warp related shows that we did want to mention, of course. We did the Time Warp, the Raiders players who acted in movies and TV. And, of course, last year we did Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV series retrospective. And as we mentioned, this is the year of 84. We've been doing them monthly. It's been a lot of fun going over all the months in the pop culture each year. A lot of huge hits, a lot of cult classics, and a lot of crappy movies. And this month is no exception with some of those categories. We have, of course, November of 1984. And we're celebrating the movies. So now, I'm going to have a little fun with this one here, guys, because I found something kind of funny. But as we always do, I did want to check with you guys before we go forward. Was there any movies you guys got caught up at all from the previous, I haven't really asked you this, guys, recently, but have you watched anything previously in the past of 1984 that you didn't get to or get around to?
Yeah, I watched, I caught up and I watched, I watched the one with Christopher Reeve, the Bostonians. I saw that one. And then there was another one I watched after last month, and now I can't remember what it was. I'll look at the notes and bring it up in a second.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us for this special episode of Time Warp 1984 November, celebrating the 40th anniversary of the movies and pop culture. But first, let's take a step back in time to 1984. Let's fuel up that DeLorean with a flux capacitor, slingshot around the sun aboard that captured Klingon bird of prey. Take a step into that blue police box or phone booth. Step into that quantum leap accelerator or take a dip in that hot tub time machine. Or Kyle, didn't we just recently come across a new time traveling device that we kind of forgotten about from the Voyagers, right?
Yeah. Luckily, I think it's red, but hopefully we can get it back to green by the end of this podcast, and that would be the Omni.
The Omni, yes. So let's go ahead and take a step back into time here, guys. Now, I came across this meme here that I thought it was kind of funny. Maybe don't give time machines to Christopher Lloyd, the only actor to ever have 2 time machines stolen from him. Kyle?
I have to ask a quick question. Is the bird of prey technically a time machine?
It became one.
Hold on.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
I feel like that's not correct. Isn't there a time travel movie, not Bill and Ted, but it's like replicas or so? It's a Keanu Reeves, and it's got time travel in it. And I think, and he gets. I want to say Keanu Reeves has had both the phone booth, and I think Keanu Reeves might have had 2 machine devices stolen from him.
Well, you need to confirm that because I'm not remembering what it was. What? Sorry?
You have to do some research.
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah, but I thought that was a funny meme. I had to share that. So
awesome.
Let's get into some world news here, guys. I always like to celebrate the world news around this time. In November, what we have here is in Raleigh, North Carolina, convicted murderer Velma Barfield becomes the first woman in the United States to be executed since 1962. Margie Velma Barfield was an American serial killer who was convicted of murder, but eventually confessed to 6 murders in total. And if I remember correctly, she was using poison, I think, at an elderly parent's place or something like that, and was like trying to get their family money and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it was on one of those true crime things I watched. Yeah. I remember that. November 6th. In the presidential election, Ronald Reagan defeats Democratic candidate Walter F. Mondale. I was at a thrift store the other day, and I saw a Walter Mondale election pin. I thought that was kind of funny. And November 8th, Anna Fisher becomes the first mother to go into orbit when she launches on a NASA ship there. Anna Lee Fisher is an American chemist, emergency physician, and a NASA astronaut, the mother of 2 children. In 1984, she became the first mother to fly in space. During her career at NASA, she was involved with 3 major programs: the Space Shuttle, the International Space Station, and the Orion spacecraft. So there you go.
That is a Renaissance woman right there.
Yeah. Well, born in 84, we've got some celebrities that were born in 84, guys. You might recognize a few of these here. Well, we've got Jenna Malone, Scarlett Johansson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Nick Folt, football player, and Asia Kate Dillon, actress. Asia Kate Dillon, if you remember her, was in, I believe, the 3rd movie of John Wick. She played the Judicator. Yeah. And, of course, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, more recently now playing in the Ahsoka series. And also the object of Scott Pilgrim's affection as well. So all born in 84 of this month, guys. So there you go.
And
Jenna Malone.
She was also amazing in Sky High. She was one of my
favorites.
Yes. I love Sky High.
I love that movie too. I remember showing that to Camille for the first time. She enjoyed that movie, so that was cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Next, we've got some totally tubular 80s toys. We always like this section here, guys. And we pick out a few at a time. And the first one we got here is the R2-D2 toy box. Children will love him from room to room and lifting off his molded plastic top to stowaway toys. Robot has sturdy fiberboard body, movable arms, base, and casters. Price was $26.99 for that toy holder there. That thing's pretty cool. I don't remember that one. Next, we have the Strawberry Shortcake Vanity, price at $44.99. Pretty as a picture. Vanity and stool have 4 storage compartments and an unbreakable mirror. I doubt that.
It was tinfoil glued.
Yeah.
It was unbreakable, but it was also unusable.
Yeah. The A-Team Moving Target game, price $7.99. See if you can have what it takes to join the A-Team. With the A-Team Moving Target game, you can test your skills as you shoot down rotating targets. A wind-up spring mechanism turns the targets. On-off switch allows 60 seconds of rotating action. Set comes complete with dart pistols and 6 soft targets. Kyle, if I remember correctly, there was a lot of gunplay in the TV series, but no one ever got shot, if I remember correctly.
Oh, no, they got hit with these darts is what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think any child has any interest in any of the targets. I think that they wanted to find their own targets.
Yeah, moving targets, ones that they were related to. Next, we have 1984 music, one of my favorite segments here. We got some fun stuff here. Bryan Adams, November 5th, releases his breakout album called Reckless, spawning multiple hit singles, achieving diamond certification in Canada and topping the charts in the United States. 6 singles were released from this album: Run to You, Somebody, Heaven, Summer of '69, One Night Love Affair, and It's Only Love. All 6 singles charted in the top 20 U.S. Billboard Hot 100. He's also very huge in Australia, according to my wife as well. Yes, Lacey.
One Night Love Affair is the song that is playing in Real Genius when they are in the auditorium with the water, and she's got the little rebreather, and that is where I know that song. Just
Okay.
I'm proud of myself for knowing more than one Bryan Adams song. Bryan Adams song. Right.
Yeah, I didn't realize these are all off this album. I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of these songs, but yeah, I was impressed by that. So yeah. Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
Real quick too. A perfect example of something that doesn't happen in the music industry anymore. One album having that many hit songs off of it. You just don't see that anymore.
It seemed like it happened more back in the day than it does now. Yeah, you're right, Kyle. Yeah. And speaking of someone who probably had some hits off one particular album, Michael Jackson, you know this guy. Yeah, check this guy out. So he got on the 20th of November, Michael Jackson receives a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame directly in front of Mann's Chinese Theater. Jackson leaves after only 3 minutes at the request of security as a crush of 5,000 onlookers becomes a safety concern. Now, I find this interesting because only someone of Michael Jackson's status can actually get a star on the Walk of Fame in one of the most important parts of that block, which is right in front of the famous Chinese theater.
Grauman's, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey,
And,
Kevin,
yeah,
real quick, I just would be reminiscent if since we just mentioned Michael Jackson real quick too. I just got to give a shout out to the passing of the legendary Quincy Jones, which happened while you were away in Australia. Music, more than a legend, he was a god in the music industry.
Yeah,
and contributed so much.
Yeah, famous producer, songwriter, musician himself in his own right, definitely. Yeah.
Rashida Jones's dad.
Yes,
Yes.
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we had Tears for Fears. On November 23rd, Tears for Fears releases the single Shout from their second studio album, Songs from a Big Chair. Shout hits U.S. #1 Billboard Hot 100 in August of 1985. What I find funny about this, someone did a meme of all these like Tears for Fears photo albums and albums covers and said, these guys look like they're a couple that can't stand talking to each other anymore or something funny like that because of the way that they're all the pictures are taken. So yeah. We teased this last month, guys. November 25th, the Band-Aid single "Do They Know It's Christmas" is recorded at the SARM Studios in Notting Hill, London, by a gathering of performers that includes Paul Young, Simon Le Bon, Bono, Phil Collins, Paul Weller, Sting, Boy George, and Tony Hadley, mostly UK musicians, of course. And I have a list there of a lot of the other people that weren't mentioned that I just mentioned. Yeah, I mean, Martin Kemp is mentioned here. I'm looking, George Michael, of course, was there. James Taylor was there. A lot of names there. Also featuring David Bowie.
Is this
Paul
before
McCartney.
or after We Are the World?
This is before.
Yeah.
Yeah. This kind of set. Kyle?
I was just gonna say we're gonna start hearing the song a whole bunch wherever we go here. Shortly.
Yeah, because the Christmas time's coming up. So yeah, this kind of started the trend. All right, next, the songs of 1984, the top 100 Billboard. And we pick a few at a time, and we're getting near the top of the charts here, guys. We've got number 9 through 15 here. We've got number 9, Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr., 10, Karma Chameleon, Culture Club, 11, Missing You by John Waite, 12, All Night by Lionel Richie, 13, Let's Hear It for the Boy by Denise Williams, 14, Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen, and to wrap out this segment, 15, Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. Now, Lacey, I know music isn't your strong point, but I'm going to assume you know most of these songs because these were near the top.
Yes, I don't know number 11, Missing You. Not sure, but I think I know the rest of them.
Gotcha. Do you have a favorite in that bunch?
hum Girls Just Want to Have Fun and Ghostbusters, but the other ones I'd probably have to hear them to chime in.
What about you, Kyle? What's your favorite in this bunch?
This is a pretty classic, heavy hitting lineup. I mean, you've got two of them, which are some of the most iconic music videos of all time, with Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and of course, Dancing in the Dark, introducing us to Courtney Cox.
Yep.
Let's Hear It for the Boy always makes me think of Footloose. All Night Long, just Lionel Richie classic. Karma Chameleon, and Kevin, as always, Bustin' Makes Me Feel Good.
Missing You, I know that song well, but yeah, these are just some bangers here. I think Dancing in the Dark and Girls Just Want to Have Fun, those are my favorites on there. Ghostbusters, of course, one of the best songs from one of the coolest soundtracks from the 80s. Karma Chameleon, that was everywhere too. I mean, like I said,
Culture Club was everywhere in this year.
Yeah, 84 was their breakout year. So yeah. All right, next, guys, we got some 1984 television, and see if we have anything debuting this month. Well, we actually don't. Not in November. All the new ones have come out in September, and then we have none. We have none. That are ending here? But let's see what we got here for the the most popular shows that we do have coming up here, guys. Is, of course, we're keeping track of the top 30. We're now down to number 4 and 3. At number 4 is 60 Minutes, and of course, The Cosby Show. There's 60 Minutes and Cosby Show here. Those were the biggest shows. And 60 Minutes, I don't know about you guys, but man, I was a kid. I didn't watch this show. It's just amazing, like how popular that it was. You know, getting around 22 million viewers a night. And then The Cosby Show at 24 million a night or a week or whatever it was. It's just huge. Yes. Lacey.
But we only had 3 options.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were 3 options. I mean, right now, these days, like a 7 share is huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. And Kevin, that lineup for 60 Minutes is probably one of the most iconic lineups of 60 Minutes as far as the anchors that were on 60 Minutes.
Harry Reasoner, Ed Bradley, Mike Wallace, and Morley Safer. Yeah.
All that and Andy Rooney.
Let me tell you, I recognize one of those names.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just like, oh yeah, the old news show, old people talk. I don't care. Mm-hmm. You know, what else is on? All right, guys, let's get into the movie segment. This is why we're here, guys. This is Time Warp, movies of 1984. And what we like to do also is let you know other parts of the movie area, like, first of all, celebrity film debuts. We got some of those right now. Ice-T made his debut in Breakin'. Brian Thompson, who we just discussed last night on our Terminator Couch Potato Theater, was one of the punks in the beginning of Terminator who got killed. He got killed in a pretty brutal way, Kyle. I think he had the Terminator arm shoved through his chest. I remember.
Yeah. It did not end well for Brian Thompson in the Terminator.
He's got some really great deaths, though. Like between this and Cobra and Buffy, like those are 3. Like,
Buffy was the best, though. Buffy was like, what does that do? Oh, that's a missile launcher that's going to destroy you, right? Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some really good deaths.
Yeah. Jennifer Tilly in No Small Affair, which we're going to be discussing shortly, and Marissa Tomei in The Flamingo Kid. So there we go.
Hot Aunt May.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so this is the Time Warp 1984, part 11 of 12 here in November of 1984, guys. And the first movie that we're going to discuss is Toy Soldiers. No, not that Toy Soldiers that we know with Sean Astin and Will Wheaton. We're talking about, hold on, let's hold them up here, Lacey. You got the Blu-ray, of course. And I've got the DVD. I bought this in Australia at DVD King in Brisbane for $24.88.
Right on. Did you watch it?
Of course I did. Yeah. I try to do that when I have it. So yeah.
Yep.
So we got some pictures of it here as well, and I think it went other names, Young Soldiers in other countries as well. And to give you a little synopsis on this here, and Kyle, I'm going to get you to mention some of the trivia that we have here. A group of A group of Caltech college students yachting off the coast of Central America are held hostage by terrorists. A retired U.S. Marine mercenary trains the hostages' friends to become an impromptu special ops force. Directed by David Fisher, stars Jason Miller, Cleavon Little, Rodolfo de Anda, Tim Robbins, Terry Garber, Tracy Scoggins, and Mary Beth Evans. Now, I've only got one trivia, Kyle. What have you got?
The film cast includes one Oscar winner, Tim Robbins, and one Oscar nominee, Jason Miller. And I just have a comment to make. First of all, there's only one true toy soldiers movie, and how dare they try to undertake Iron Eagle's plot?
Okay, hold on, Kyle. There is 2 Toy Story movies. This one came first.
No, we don't recognize that one.
Well, you have to recognize it because I'm holding it up in front of your face.
I will call it Young Soldiers.
And it's also on YouTube for free if you want to watch it. Lacey, you got the Blu-ray there. Is there any special features on that thing? Or
it has the trailers, and let me just tell you something. The first trailer on this is hilarious. Like it was billed as a comedy. So I was like, it sounds hilarious. It sounds like it could be really funny. Like some people get kidnapped. Their friends who are like, goofy college students go to rescue them. What could be funnier than that? No, absolutely not. This is not a funny movie. This is not there's like terrorists like raping people and throwing people into dungeons and dead murders and things. And then there's like the girl who gets away, then wants to get her dad to like fund, a group, somebody to come to go rescue her friends. And she's like, please, daddy, for me. It's just,
that's pretty spot on right there, actually.
It's so bad. And she's like, oh, come on, it won't cost that much. And, I mean, it's just, I
like how she's like trying to hawk daddy's limousine to get some money to do it,
And so they're like they pull into this garage where Freddy the Fence, who is, by the way, the top billed person on the cast, the guy who played Freddy the Fence, never heard of him in life.
There was a lot of unintentional comedy moments in this movie.
It was so bad. I mean, it was just like, it was not funny at all. And also, like, this was a time when men wore short shorts.
Oh,
and when someone is trying to be like the macho, I mean, what's his name? Miller. His character is wearing like a camo top, like a camo shirt, and like the shortest white like tennis shorts I've ever seen.
Magnum PI kind of set that trend, and people just took the balls and ran with it.
It was so ridiculous, and it was like
you guys didn't catch my joke.
Yep.
We did.
There was a reason why there were disclaimers. I'm just going to say this: the short shorts there was a reason why there was disclaimers before NBA games.
Big alert! Figs alert! This movie is not good. It's very cheesy. It's I could see this like on MST3K making fun of it or something like that.
And it's just bad. Like there's like they make fun of women. The guys in it are very like it's just.
And Blazing Saddles Cleavon Little is in it, which is weird. And Tim Robbins. Tim freaking Robbins is in this movie. It is really weird.
But it's just like it's just.
Yeah. We got it.
So bloody and so not a comedy. Not a comedy.
Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting a comedy out of it, so but yeah. All right, let's get on the next one here. I think I found this next film here, streaming on Amazon, maybe. I was kind of curious about it. It's called Blame It on the Night. And I'm going to read the poster because I love reading the poster stuff on here. He's the idol of 50 million fans and the father of a boy he's never met. The star of the world's greatest rock and roll band is about to take his son out of military school and on his incredible concert tour. No matter what happens, just blame it on the night. Yeah, that's what the poster says. Blame it on the night, guys. Basically, when his unmarried mother dies, custody of the 13-year-old Job is assumed by his alleged father, Chris, whom he's never met. Job is an enthusiastic Job, is that what it is? Mm-hmm. Job is an enthusiastic cadet at a military academy, and Chris turns out to be a top-grossing rock star who removes Job from his beloved school to keep him company on tour. Getting acquainted is fraught with culture shock for both father and son. Stars Nick Mancuso as the father rock star, Brian Thames and Leslie Ackerman. Not a lot of trivia on this. I think so too, right, Kyle?
Not much. Basically, Ted Neely from Jesus Christ Superstar wrote the music and lyrics and was the singing voice for Chris.
Did you get around to seeing it as any of you guys?
Boom.
Of course.
Hey, right there, baby.
Let me see that. Look at that. You got an action. Now, hold on. Is that a real DVD or is that a sus DVD?
No, this is a real DVD. It actually it says Sony right there on the disc. Yeah.
Okay. I always check the backside of the disc to make sure it's not that blue tint, which is like a copy, a copy. Yeah. So yeah. Nice. Okay. So what are your thoughts on Blame It on the Night?
When I was a kid, I loved this kid who was in it. Byron Thames is his name, and he was in this and like 7 Minutes in Heaven, a couple other Blame It, Billion for Boris, like just a few small movies. And this was one of my favorites because he was in it, and so I watched all the things that he was in. And then I became obsessed with Nick Mancuso and started watching things like Stingray. But yeah, it's a good kind of a heartfelt father-son thing where, it's the buddy comedy / opposing force, the Odd Couple. It was like the Odd Couple and a father-son comedy at the same time, or not comedy, but kind of a dramedy. It had some fun comedy. It had some endearing pieces. But yeah, so it was good. I enjoyed it.
I agree with you to the most part. I thought it could have been executed a little bit better. The kid was great, I thought too. And you know what? Nick Mancuso, I like this guy. Everything I've seen him in, I like him in. I would have liked to see him become a little bit bigger star. Kyle, you got thoughts?
Well, I'm more about Nick Mancuso because Nick Mancuso feels like one of those guys from the 80s who Hollywood, whether it was television or movies, really tried to make something out of, and he just never caught on.
I feel like he and Wise Guy, Ken Walls.
Yeah.
I feel like the two of them competed for so many parts.
They canceled each other out.
And they canceled, kind of. And then there was also, a few things that maybe Springsteen got, and a few things that Rick Springfield got, not Springsteen, Rick Springfield got. And I feel like the three of them kind of canceled each other out when it came to, kind of getting that big, hold on some sort of major career action.
He's been busy. If you look at his IMDb, he's been in a lot of stuff. He was, I think he was one of the villains in the Under Siege film as well. He was in that. And then, if I remember correctly, guys, he was also in Heartbreakers, the film that we talked about a month or two ago that just got kind of lost in the ether. A really good, Friends movie. Two single guys living in LA that we talked about that I'm a big fan of. But yeah, I like him in everything that I've seen. Nick Mancuso, good name too. So yeah, there you go. All right, guys, the next film, The Killing Fields, made a little over $35 million. And I'm going to read the poster here, like I always like to do here. He was a reporter for the New York Times. He covered the Cambodian War with his camera and wrote about it with his heart. His coverage would win him a Pulitzer Prize for international reporting. But the friend who made it all possible couldn't be by his side. He was halfway around the world with his life in great danger. This is the story of war and friendship, the anguish of the country, and the one man's will to live. The Killing Fields. A journalist is trapped in Cambodia during Tyrant Pol Pot's bloody Year Zero cleansing campaign, which claimed the lives of 2 million undesirable civilians. Directed by Roland Joffrey, stars Sam Waterston, Hang S. Noor, John Malkovich, Julian Sands, and Craig T. Nelson. Kyle, I've got several trivia on here. Let's read some of these.
Yeah, the real Dith Pran went on to work as a celebrated photographer for the New York Times, often speaking out about the Cambodian genocide. He died of pancreatic cancer in 2008 at the age of 65, nursed in his final days by his ex-wife and his best friend, Sidney Schanberg. Also in real life, Hang S. Noor's wife died under the Khmer Rouge regime, hemorrhaging during childbirth. The baby also died. She knew that she couldn't contact her husband as doctors were all being murdered by the regime. So by keeping her silence and dying of internal bleeding, she effectively saved his life. Hang Eshnor had to flee the set after reenacting the harrowing scene where he is faced down by a female teenage soldier, as it invoked too many horrific memories of his time spent living under the Khmer Rouge regime. And then Pol Pot was still mourning an insurgency in Cambodia after Vietnam had overthrown the Khmer Rouge when the film was being made in neighboring Thailand. In fact, the Thai authorities were very keen on to have the horrors of Pol Pot's regime depicted on screen, as it would bring international attention to the political situation there.
I had never seen this film before until recently. I believe I saw it. Or did it? Was it? It was streaming somewhere. I can't remember where I watched it, but I did find it free. I never really intended to see it. It just looked like a depressing film. I know it got some Oscar acclaim. I believe the what's his name that co-starred that played the character Hang Esnor. I believe he actually won the Oscar, and he was one of the few, like one of two people to win an Oscar that really wasn't an actor, I think, or something like that. But before I get into my thoughts on this, though, has any of you guys seen this?
I have seen this. It's been a good while since I've seen this, but it's a very powerful movie. And for a good portion of the 80s and even going into the early 90s, it was one of those movies. Like, you have to watch this movie because of the message it has and what it brings. But it's heavy. It's very, very heavy. And it was for a lot, like I said, for a long time. Have you seen The Killing Fields? You got to see The Killing Fields. And it was one of those, though, it's like you watched it. It's not a movie you're going to go back and revisit because you just get the message from it.
I remember learning about Pol Pot in history. Lacey, before I go on, have you heard of this film? Have you seen this film? You're on mute, by the way.
Sorry. Any movie that you can classify as one of those movies is a movie that I haven't seen. If it's super dramatic, if there's a lot of like bad things happening to people, war, especially like genocide or like social cleansing, like I can't watch that stuff. I just can't do it.
You're not alone in that. That was one of the reasons why I avoided it for so long, to be honest with you. I heard of the situation. And
I mean, people talk about all the different like Hotel Rwanda and I can't. I mean, I don't watch Holocaust or genocides. I can't watch any of those things.
Well, if you look up genocide under the dictionary, there's a lot of names that'll pop up there. Of course, one of the most famous being Hitler himself, but Pol Pot was one of them as well. And I'm a history buff, so I was kind of curious about this, and I remember hearing about this during Vietnam stuff as well, and so I watched it, and it's a tough watch. I'll never watch it again. I thought that John Malkovich was good in this as one of the photographers, and there's some very good dramatic moments, especially regarding passports and stuff like that. But there's a moment too when the actor Hang Noor, playing the character, escapes from his forced labor camp, and he comes across a ditch in Waterfield that has a bunch of bones in it and stuff from a mass grave. I gotta tell you though, the story is very, very strong, and it does send a message, but I felt it's not that I wanted more carnage, but I felt like in order to really have a stronger message about Pol Pot's genocide, I felt they should have actually leaned on that a little bit more, and they didn't. There was some moments where the photographers are pulled from their hotels, from young kids and weapons and stuff, and there was a few executions here and there, but I felt they kind of pulled back on showing how bad it really was. And like I said, I don't like to call for that stuff, but I wasn't as shocked as I was assuming it was to be, because I already knew the story. I knew who this guy was, and I knew the horrendous things that he did and stuff like that. But and what's really weird is I'm used to seeing Sam Waterston in his later days. I didn't even recognize him that young. I'm used to him with the gray beard, and you see him in all this stuff in the the 90s and 2000s, and no, he did commercials for a long time. I didn't even recognize him. He's like young and beard's brown and everything, but he was very good in this. I will definitely give him props for that. So
I wonder if the rating system had something to do with whether or not they showed all as many things. And also, wasn't Pol Pot? He was wasn't. I feel like I'm seeing this from like history. It's kind of muddled in there, but wasn't he like proud of the fact that he instructed his soldiers to do so many like horrific, like deliberately
Yeah.
torturous
Oh, yeah.
horrific
Yeah.
things?
Yeah, the thing with this movie is they don't show him at all. He's not
Right.
in the movie. They just see parts of his minions doing, pulling power plays
Right.
and doing his bidding. But I kind of wish someone would have played him and given an evil to his face as to just showing like the world that he was creating, because
Yeah.
a lot of people may not have known what he looked like or how he did things.
But I wonder if they deliberately did not show the extent of the torture specifically because he was so proud of it, and that might have been something that he, I don't know.
It's possible, but I thought the movie would have been more effective if they did. Just my personal opinion on it.
I didn't see it, so I can't like make a thing.
Yeah.
But just it's kind of like you don't say a terrorist name on TV if they want to be.
It's one of those films, though. I felt it has been lost in oblivion, as we use the term here in Fandom Podcast Network. It's gotten lost. People don't refer to it anymore. People don't talk about this anymore. And a lot of people don't refer to that Holocaust that happened, that Pol Pot did as well. It's interesting little subnote of a film about a historic event there. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's get on to happier things here. Let's talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. This released November 9th, horror movie we all know that launched a franchise, made over $25 million in its original theatrical run. You can also find it for free on YouTube. And I love the poster here. It says, if Nancy doesn't wake up screaming, she won't wake up at all. Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. Teenager Nancy Thompson must uncover the dark truth concealed by her parents after she and her friends become targets of the spirit of a serial killer with a bladed glove in their dreams, in which if they die, kills them in real life. Directed by Wes Craven, stars Heather Langenkamp, Johnny Depp, Robert Englund, John Saxon. And Kyle, give us some trivia on Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, I have some trivia. New Line Cinema was saved from bankruptcy by the success of this film and was jokingly nicknamed the house that Freddy built. This film had a lot of issues. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But all of the boiler room footage in the film was shot in the basement of the Lincoln Heights Jail in Los Angeles, which was condemned shortly after production wrap due to the high levels of asbestos. The scene where Freddy's arms elongate was achieved by having men with fishing poles on each side of the alley operating a set of puppet arms attached to Robert Englund. Alan Pasqua, Heather Langenkamp's boyfriend at the time of the shooting, is credited for creating Freddy's nursery rhyme. In the original script, Freddy was a child molester. However, the decision was made to change him into being a child murderer to avoid accusations of exploiting a series of child molesters in California around the time of production. He was rewritten as a child molester in the 2010 remake starring Jackie Earle Haley. Kevin, I have a couple other pieces of trivia I would like to add into this.
Sure.
If you don't mind. One is that after this movie, about a month after this movie came out, Robert Englund was at a convention, and they said, "Oh, there's a pretty good line for you." He said, like, "Oh, it's all they're here for me for V." It's like. And then he started seeing the people walking in and how they were dressed. And the line was several blocks long for Robert Englund. And he's like, that's when I realized, oh, we're onto something here. Another thing, there was a great oral history of this article put out by The Ringer not too long ago. One of the great things about this was Wes Craven and his wife basically adopted the four main young actors from this film, including Johnny Depp. And they were like, he was like a second father to us, and she was definitely like a mother to us. How much he actually protected them in this film to keep their sanity together is absolutely amazing.
So I'm holding up. That's really cool. That's good trivia there to add, Kyle. Appreciate that. Nightmare on Elm Street 8-film collection. I have this on DVD, and I have the features glow in the dark, which is pretty cool. And it's got all of them from the first one all the way up to Freddy versus Jason. Pretty good collection here at Walmart. I'm going to say it was probably like $20. I got that one there. And then, of course, I do have the original on its DVD as well with a bunch of special features, which I like. So I just want to comment real quick on the 2010 remake with Jackie Earle Haley. I did go see that. But the problem with that film, Jackie Earle did a good job being Freddy Krueger, and having the Freddy Krueger charisma and humor. But god damn, Jackie Earle Haley, you are too damn short to play that role. You as they tried as many camera tricks to make him, because Jackie Earle's a short guy. I don't know if you guys know this or not. And after the success of The Watchmen, obviously he was getting more roles, and he was good, but I kept taking me out of the movie with him being so short. I did have a question for you guys, and Lacey, you might be able to. Let me ask you: have you seen Nightmare on Elm Street? I know you're not a big horror person. You are muted, by the way. Have you seen Nightmare on Elm Street?
I have seen the scene of Johnny Depp's death. That is the scene. That is a scene that was shown in a film class that I took in school. That is the only part of that film that I have seen. The only Freddy or Jason movie I've ever seen was the Freddy versus Jason movie, and that was because a bunch of us went to the movie theater, and whatever we were getting ready to see was sold out, and so I got stuck, and I legit sat like this the whole time, like just eyes, like just covered my eyes. Nope. I will say one caveat: I do have Friday the 13th with Jared Padalecki. That's the only, yeah. Also, one little tidbit of information: DJ Qualls, speaking of Jared Padalecki and Supernatural references, DJ Qualls is the new cast. He's just been cast as Freddy Krueger for the new TV show.
Oh, cool. Nice.
He plays on
a few years ago, my wife Erin, we were down in Pasadena, and Pasadena's got a lot of famous houses and movies, and a lot of them horror related, of course, including Halloween House and the Halloween Hedge. But like literally within a couple of blocks of each other, you got the Nightmare on Elm Street house, and you got another Halloween house from one of the other characters in it as well. We went to go visit those and get pictures taken in front of them. But I have a question for you guys. When I was doing the notes for this, and I'm like, oh great, this is the year Nightmare on Elm Street came out, and launched a franchise. Why the hell was it released in November and not October? Kyle, answer that question for me.
I can answer that question for you, actually, Kevin. And it goes back to the fact that New Line Cinema was the house that Freddie built. This movie almost bankrupt 3 different times before it was finished filming. The producers,
so there was a delay in the filming then, basically.
The producers literally at one point ran out of money and were paying the crew out of their own pockets. And what saved this movie and what finally got it finished and released was they made a early home video rights deal with this. And it's so complicated about the points and how they couldn't go over a certain amount of theaters released for this original film. It could only hit like a certain number of theaters because of they didn't want it affecting the home video rights and other rights that they had to negotiate out to these other places. And because of all that, it delayed the production of the movie, and it delayed the release of the movie. It was originally planned to be a Halloween film.
Yeah.
And because of all that, it got pushed back and came out in November. And I mean, this movie, truthfully, it almost never ever happened. And you read the stories of what they had to do for budgeting and like how they built this one room that like just destroyed the actors because it was on a swivel, and it wasn't mechanical. It was guys moving the room on basically like a gyro.
Yeah, Amanda Wiss's first death scene in the film, where she gets cut and she's like flopping around on the walls and ceiling. It's pretty gruesome. But what's interesting about it is that it doesn't take place during Halloween, if I remember correctly. I happen to have it playing here, so it doesn't have to, but horror films like to drop during Halloween. So maybe they're like, let's have a horror Thanksgiving month. I don't know. It's interesting.
One of the other things too, the famous bathtub scene with Heather Langenkamp. She was in that tub for 10 hours filming that. They said they would have to heat up water and keep putting warm water in there so she wouldn't get hypothermia.
She came out as a prune, I'm sure. All right, guys, let's get to Lacey.
Apparently, Robert Englund had a car dealership in Jacksonville, Florida, on Cassett Avenue, which back in the day, that's my grandparents, my mom's parents lived on the street behind Cassett Avenue. And so they had a pair of the gloves framed on the wall. And I was so terrified of just all of the things, because I don't do horror, that it was kind of a joke that like if we were going to dinner or something, we go and we had to drive past, they'd be like, well, we're going to pull in, you can see the gloves. No, I don't want to see the gloves. I don't want to see the gloves. Don't make me see the gloves.
I do have one quick question before we move on.
Sure.
How many of you guys know people who watched this film for the first time and literally did have like problems going to sleep for 3 or 4 days afterwards, especially when this film first came out?
Yeah, I actually didn't see it when it first came out. I saw it several years later on VHS, and it became a go-to horror film. And one of the things that I'm not a big horror guy. My wife is, but the thing that attracted me to this film was Freddy and how funny he was and sadistic he was and the jokes that he made. He was different than a lot of the other, faceless or scary, like your Michael Myers and your Jason and all that kind of stuff. He had charisma. Yes, he was a killer, but I thought that he was entertaining and funny at the same time, and that's one of the things. And I actually did a Halloween costume, and this was before you could buy that glove with the plastic knives on it everywhere. You couldn't find that. They didn't make that till like the 90s, I think. Because I remember in the late 80s, I was doing a Freddy costume, and I was like, well, how can I make this happen? I ended up making my own Freddy glove out of like construction paper and masking tape and popsicle sticks, basically. And I did a pretty good job. I was proud of it and painted it and stuff. And then I had like this old kind of red beat up sweater that looked kind of like it. The mask was interesting. I had a werewolf mask that I turned inside out so it looked like the burned face, because it had that look on the inside of the mask, a la William Shatner's mask for Halloween, Michael Myers. That's how that was done. And then I found a hat that looked similar, and that was my Freddy Krueger costume. And then like a few years later, then you could buy those damn gloves anywhere.
Yeah. Robert Englund is actually very instrumental in the look of Freddy. He actually wore that sweater. It was a Christmas sweater, and he wore it in as a joke while he was sitting in the makeup chair, and they liked it so much they said, you got to keep it on. The original hat they had planned for Freddy to have was a bowler hat, and Englund came in wearing a fedora from something, and he's like, no, this is it. And so interesting things.
My favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie though is actually 3 Dream Warriors.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That introduced me to Dokken, that heavy metal band, and that was a fun one. Lacey.
So for this time period, it's kind of the big 5, right? You got Freddy, Jason, Michael, then you've got Leatherface and Pinhead, right? Are those the kind of like the big 5, right?
Yeah, that's a good. Well, the fact that that's pretty impressive, actually.
I went to film school. I don't have to like watch the movies to know the names.
I think a little later on, a lot of people would start adding Tony Todd's Candyman into that grouping.
Right, a little bit later, right? But so, do you think that the reason?
Oh, and also the Child's Play doll too. So yeah.
Right, but as far as like the big 5 like serial killers, sort of the hatchet men, do you think that Freddy was more creepy just because he's the only one that spoke?
Well, Freddy was definitely in the top 3. Right? Freddy's in the top 3, and I would say that probably Michael Myers is at number 1, with Jason at 2, and then Freddy at 3. Those are the top 3. Where you put those up there, I was talking to my wife about that. She would agree with that. Michael Myers is the one that really kind of started that creepy ghost, invincible, killer slasher type thing.
But you were saying that you were impressed by the charisma that he had, and I'm just saying because Michael didn't speak.
Yeah.
Leatherface like groaned. I think Jason might growl at some point, right?
Yeah.
Just, like watching the trailers and stuff. I don't know if Pinhead spoke.
The other thing too about there was some very creative death scenes when it came to the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, revolving, dreams and people sleeping. And it was one of the worst nightmares too. Yes, you have, and think about this, when you have a guy that's very tough to kill in both, Michael Myers and Jason, the problem is the dilemma in the nightmare films is that you can't go to sleep. If you go to sleep, you freaking die. And that is a horrible, horrible thought, that you can't sleep. And then dementia sticks in, and then he takes advantage of that. And then you end up falling asleep and boom, you're dead. It was a great concept. And he had a funny way of tormenting you. And in many ways it was sadistic, but he was funny about his approach. It was very clever, and that's when it comes to my favorite horror icon of all time, it's freaking Freddy Krueger for that reason.
Right on.
Real quick, Kevin, I have one question about you. This original one. What was your feeling on the ending?
What specifically, Kyle?
Well, because the ending where it's like the four of them all seem like they're alive, they're driving off, and then that door shuts, and then you see kind of the change in the door with Freddy. So a lot of people are like, are they still in a dream? Are they actually alive? What was going on there? And what the funny story about it is Wes Craven had one idea, the producers had another. They ended up filming them both, and then they ended up deciding we're just going to combine both ideas here.
What's funny about that is like that's another thing that the Freddy movies were so good at is you never really knew if they were awake or not, and so they could blur that line, and keep you guessing, when it came to certain scenes and stuff like that. Could he only kill you when you slept, or could he come into the real world? It was very interesting, and the fact that it just wasn't a guy who he had motive. He was obviously this horrible child molester, and the parents of all these kids found out and killed the guy. If I remember correctly, that's what happened. And then he's getting his own revenge in his own way on the offspring of the parents, which, I love it when you have a story like that kind of backs up instead of just having this no-face person that's walking around killing you,
I got a question. So did he die in his sleep? How did he get in your dreams? Like, is that like, how did that become the thing?
I don't know if that was actually.
It was because he was burned. The town hunted him down.
Right.
Burned
him.
He swore revenge.
Didn't he kill his victims in their sleep or something? I don't remember.
But it was a lot of it had to do with what the town did to him as punishment for killing that.
Put him in their dreams.
Yeah, it was something. There was been a few different explanations of his origins in the film.
You can just say suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
I'll try not to nitpick. Sorry.
Either way, Robert Englund was just fantastic in this role, and I like that became his thing. And
on that note, my thought on that is that even though we might rank him higher, I think Freddy Krueger is the most pop culture influential of all of the slasher films.
And what helped him too is he had a cool killing weapon. That glove hand.
And just his personality.
Yeah, and the way he would scrape it along pipes and metal things, and he used it to a very efficient way. So yeah. All right, well, let's get into another little hidden gem here that I discovered last year, and this is called No Small Affair. He's 16, she's 22. All he wanted was to get her picture. What he got was no small affair. Charles, a 16-year-old amateur photographer, accidentally takes a picture of Laura and falls in love with her when he develops a film. He finds out that she works as a singer in a bar, but is about to be thrown out. Although rejected at first by the 23-year-old, he wants to help her and starts an ad campaign behind her back, which has unexpected results. Jerry Schatzberg is a director. It stars John Cryer, Demi Moore, George Wendt, Elizabeth Daily, Tim Robbins again, he's busy, Jeffrey Tambor, and Jennifer Tilly. Kyle, give us some trivia on No Small Affair, please.
So here's what I think is interesting. This film was originally set to star Sally Field and Matthew Broderick in 1981, but production shut down after director Martin Ritt had a heart attack. Talk about some sliding door things happening there.
Yeah.
Yep. In Demi Moore's memoir, Inside Out, which came out in 2019, she claimed that John Cryer allegedly lost his virginity to her during the shooting of this movie. Cryer later said on Twitter that while he and Moore dated during the filming, he lost his virginity in high school, not during the making of this movie. The debut theatrical feature film for both John Cryer and Jennifer Tilly. And singer Chrissy Faith dubbed the singing voice of Demi Moore during her vocal performing scenes, according to an article published in the 8th November edition, 1984 edition of the Los Angeles Times newspaper.
Lacey, you got a copy of this film on DVD like I do?
No, I don't. It's stuck in the mail. It's not going to be here for like
darn it!
Days. I know. I'm so grumpy.
I like how that's kind of becoming an ongoing theme with this. we
That
order
one?
these films to watch them before we,
Yeah.
do the pod, and they get stuck or lost in the mail in some
Right.
cases.
No
Yeah.
Small Affair and Bad Manners that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Those two are still like in the mail somewhere.
Gotcha.
Interestingly enough, John Cryer was born in 1965. He was, I guess, 19 when he made this movie.
Playing a 16-year-old.
Yeah, playing a 16-year-old. Demi Moore was born in 1962. So she was 22 playing 22. I don't know. It just they look so. I mean, because they're both like she's Rat Pack, he's Rat Pack adjacent, I guess. But they look so different in age. Like, I mean, he just looks like he's 12.
Well, he has a baby face. He always has.
Yeah.
Kind of like me. When you look at pictures when I was 16, I look like I was 14.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very very underrated gem movie. I was very surprised by this one. I love John Cryer, big fan of his.
Yeah.
And Demi Moore too. This was right around the time, of course, when she was, of course, doing St. Elmo's Fire, as well as what was it, One Crazy Summer with John Cusack, which is the kind of unofficial single or unofficial sequel of Better Off Dead. And George Wendt was good in this. I think he plays the father. And Elizabeth Daily, of course, a big fan of hers as well. She's in this. A very, very fun movie. I like the concept of it, and he helps her career with taking pictures and
just
stuff
one
like
more
that.
movie we couldn't make today. That is statutory, all kinds of things.
Yeah,
just
kind of not governed too well back in the 80s, and not as much of a big deal as it is nowadays.
Yeah.
But a very charming film. I liked it. I thought it was a good movie, and I'm keeping my DVD. So it's not hard to find. As you mentioned, you can find it on DVD. Did you get a Blu-ray or DVD?
I got DVD. The Blu-ray was only available on Region B, and I don't have the Region B player.
Gotcha. Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things about this movie, going back with it too, is in some ways you forget how long Demi Moore has been around, because she's had at least she might be on right now, or like her third or fourth career resurgence with The Substance and now Landman, the Tyler Sheridan show. But it kind of is mind blowing when you go back and look at these 80s movies. It's like, that's right. That's how long she's been around and doing movies now. And so it is a little bit trippy. And I mean, like I said, she's probably had 3 to 4 career resurgences. And she's
remember when she had a career resurgence in the second Charlie's Angels film? Remember that?
That's what I was going to say. Like at 60, she was playing a former angel and just still in fantastic shape. Like just, I mean, those kind of.
I think she was closer to 50 in that one, because she's around 62 now. I think
she got into that amazing shape for G.I. Jane and then striptease and just never lost it.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. The next film is a little series of films here. This is Oh God, You Devil. Original theatrical run, made about $21 million. That's funny. They both look like George Burns, is what the poster says. He meets his match in one hot comedy. George Burns returns as God and as Satan. The battle over the soul of a young rock star who is willing to sell his soul to the devil. Director Paul Bogart, of course, stars George Burns, Ted Wass, Ron Silver, and Roxanne Hart. Kyle, give us some trivia first. And I also want to show off Lacee's. Looks like she's got a Blu-ray there. Let's see that, Lacee. Nice.
It's the trilogy, so it's all 3.
Okay. The Oh God collection. That's nice. Very cool.
Yes.
I like that.
It's Oh God, Book 2, and then Oh God, You Devil. The first one was John Denver. The second one was Luann. And then the third one is my brain stopped working for his name. The rock star.
Is it Ted Wass or Ron Silver?
Yes, sorry, Ted Wass. Yeah, Ted Wass.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yep.
So, Kevin, you'll appreciate this. The crowd shown in Buffalo outside the War Memorial Auditorium was actually waiting to see the Van Halen 1984 tour stop in Buffalo. Concert officials kept the door shut to allow the crowd to build. Weezer drummer Patrick Wilson was within the crowd outside and credits this concert as his inspiration to begin taking drum lessons. Rick James was also in attendance at the show, and Wilson often calls to his friends the sight of James and his entourage passing closely by on the floor. So we do know the devil was definitely in the concert at this concert if James was there. The devil appears in this movie as Harry O. Toppet. Toppet means hell in Hebrew. The initials also spell H-O-T, hot. This was the final of 3 Oh God movies starring George Burns. This was not the first time that George Burns portrayed the devil. In 1956, he appeared as a horn devil in the George Burns Spike Jones show.
Lacey, can you hold up your Blu-ray edition there? I want to highlight that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I want to see that there. Hold on. Oh God collection. You know, and let me see the back of it too. That's pretty cool. I like that. Nice. Okay, so Lacey, I want you to start on this because I'll be honest with you. I think I saw the first one. But God, I don't remember seeing the devil, this one here. I would like to go to it because it's been a while since I've seen anything with George Burns in it. And he was, of course, most famous for always having a cigar in his hand, and he was always a popular guest on night show circuits and has some devilish one-liners. Very funny guy. Give me your thoughts first of all on the trilogy itself, and then Oh God, You Devil, since you were a little more into it than I am.
Yes. Okay. So I watched all 3 of these in the last week.
Nice, Lacey. Hold on. Lacey, this is why I love you. This is why you are on this show. And if I haven't said it enough, and to the listeners and the viewers out there, I appreciate you so much in the fact how much dedication you show to this podcast by doing such things. Thank you.
I like talking about movies is one of my favorite things ever. So if you give me an assignment, I know the assignment.
That's fantastic. I love you for that. That's great.
No, okay. So this is a Shout Factory release, by the way. It's number 123.
It's the what release? I'm sorry.
Shout Factory.
Shout Factory. Gotcha.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's a Shout Factory release. Now, cool thing. This has audio commentaries on all 3 films. Okay, but if you get this, they're hidden. You have to go into the audio setup to get to them. They're not
interesting. Okay.
And that's something that happens in a lot of like secondary release films, like if you got like Kino Lorber sometimes, or Arrow films, or these. Sometimes you have to go into the audio setup to get to a commentary.
Who does the audio commentary?
So there's several different. There's film critics, and then there's one that Carl Reiner did. I think that Carl Reiner was on the first one. Yeah. But the coolest part was, and don't get me wrong, the commentaries were great, but on each one, the first one starred John Denver, and the special features, it showed John Denver hosting the Johnny Carson show. First, it showed him with so it was like a half an hour thing where he was interviewed on Johnny Carson. Then the next piece was when he interviewed Carl Reiner when Johnny was on vacation or whatever. So they did that whole thing. And then on the second one, they did the same thing. They interviewed George Burns and all that kind of stuff. The third one, they actually have, you just finished saying that's not the first time he's played the devil, that he was a horned devil on what was the show that you listed? It was in the trivia.
It was a George Burns Spike Jones show in 1956.
Yes. So there's that 45-minute show is on the disc, so you can see that episode. It's in black and white. There's and the special, because it's a stage thing. It's not it's a talk show kind of thing. So it was interesting. Yeah.
So this was the last film of the trilogy. Oh God, You Devil. What is your thoughts on the film?
In my opinion, best of the 3. The first one was, man talks to the devil, talks to God. Everybody thinks he's crazy, right? Second one was little girl talks to God, thinks she's crazy. God bails them out each time by firstly showing himself and proving a miracle to the people that were about to, put the little girl in the institution and then put him in jail or whatever. This one was done a little bit differently because the devil comes in and has him sign a contract. He makes a deal with the devil, and he lies and said that it's a temporary thing. He doesn't. It's not like hellhounds and that kind of thing, like a supernatural or whatever. It's he just assigns him a new name, and like the world believes that he's a rock star.
Okay.
So the opening scene is the rock star who was that named guy who had a 7-year contract. It runs out. So basically he switches into this guy's role, and that guy becomes the husband to his wife and the father to the child that's on the way. Like there's this whole thing where he's just like, wait a minute, that's my life. And he's like, no, that's not the life you wanted. You wanted this one. So it's an interesting kind of thing. And it's all solved with a poker game.
Huh.
Between
Okay.
between God and the devil. So it's a fun. It's fun. It's got a little bit more, I guess, adult humor to it. The first two were kind of sweet, and this one is more kind of has like a little more of an edge to it.
I was just happy that George Burns had a trilogy,
Mhm.
and he had a character that people, were gravitated towards. Kyle.
Yep.
Interesting thing about this, he only did one other movie after this, 18 Again.
18 Again. Yep.
He lived for 12 more years after this movie was made. And it's just funny because I guess from time period of my time, you just always picture George Burns as old. And it's like, it was like, it was like he was immortal old,
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point, Kyle. Yeah. Immortal old. He was always, there's a few actors I always feel like they're always like that. Like they've been the same age forever. Like Gene Hackman, it's like one of those actors that felt like he's been the same age as long as you were with him. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for going down that rabbit hole there, Lacee.
It's a fun rabbit hole to go down.
All right, so I got an interesting film here, and there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to highlight this film. This movie is called Special Effects, and it's a 1984 American horror thriller film directed by Larry Cohen and starring Zoe Lund and Eric Bogosian. It follows a plot of a woman who is cast in a film by a director based on a murder he committed. And Kyle, I know I've given you some trivia there. Go ahead and read those out there because I got some thoughts on this, more specifically the lead actress in this film.
Yeah. So one of the headshots Neville and Detective Delroy look through is Dustin Hoffman as Dorothy Michaels and Tootsie. The screenplay was actually based on a script titled The Cutting Room that Cohen had written circa 1967. At the time, Cohen had been interested in optioning his screenplay for Daddy's Gone, A Hunting in 1969 to Alfred Hitchcock, but instead Universal Studios hired Mark Robson to direct the film. Filming took place in 1984 New York City. Cohen recalled of shooting the film that the stars Lund, Bogenson, and Ridgen were highly offbeat people who lived in strange basements and had no money and were highly talented.
So there's a reason why I wanted to bring this film to the table, and I actually had bought this film a couple of years ago, not realizing that we would eventually cover it here for Time Warp 1984. It's more because of the actress, and it started with I'm going to showcase the film here. Back in 2021, when we were celebrating the year of 1981 for Time Warp, I did a separate podcast with my wife, Erin, and we were celebrating the 1981 horror films, because if you're a horror movie fan, 81 was a breakout year for horror films. If you look at 1981 in horror, you'll see what I'm talking about. Of course, one of her favorite films, Evil Dead, came out in 81. And one of the ones that came out too was this one called Miss 45. This one here, it's a very iconic video cover here. And if you're looking at the YouTube video, you'll see why. And it's a kind of a cult classic here. And it's basically about a young woman who's shy and unable to speak. And unfortunately, she gets raped. And she is able to overcome one of her rapists and steals his gun. And she goes basically on a shooting spree of men. She starts killing men randomly on the street. There's a famous scene where she goes to a party, a Halloween party, and she dresses up as this nun character on the back here. I was more, and by the way, for horror fans, this is Abel Ferrara, who did Bad Lieutenant, and also one of my favorite films, Christopher Walken films, King of New York. You guys know what that film is. Mm-hmm. And so this movie's kind of become a cult classic of horror films, and she's really good. She's very beautiful. She's very striking. Her name's Zoe Tamarilis Lund. She was born in 1962, and she was an American musician, model, actress. She was best known for association for two films with director Abel Ferrara, Miss 45, 81, in which she starred, and Bad Lieutenant, 1992, which she co-wrote the screenplay. Now, what's interesting about this character that she's also in special effects here is the actress herself was she did not shy away from her heroin addiction. She actually talked about it, and she didn't tell other people to do it, but she didn't hide from it. And unfortunately, it did take the toll on her life, and she died kind of young. She died in 1999. I think it was at 36 or something like that, due to the effects of having drugs and alcohol in your system for so long. But what's interesting about this movie's special effects is I like the concept. Eric Bogosian plays this director who's like trying to get these young actresses into his film, and he ends up killing one of them basically. And he has this crazy idea. He hides his crime, but he has this crazy idea of, well, I'm a filmmaker. Why don't I make a film about what I just did? And he hires this young guy as himself, and he's trying to set up another murder. But what he wants to do is he wants to get it on film, and he wants to basically scapegoat this guy into the killing. And this is where this young actress Zoe comes in and plays the version of the character that was killed in real life, and the stuff that goes in there. It's not a great film, but I kind of like the idea of the film. It's a kind of a little hidden film based around, of course, this actress who was very beautiful. She was very charismatic, and kind of has a little stamp in horror history. So has any of you guys seen this film?
I have not.
I didn't think I had until you went through and told that whole thing, and I was like, I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen that. Eric Bogosian, he always gives like really good creepy.
Yeah, he did that talk show movie where he plays a Howard Stern type.
Talk to Death or something.
Yeah, and then he gets killed in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he was in Gossip with Norman Reedus and James Marsden and Lena Headey. He was the bad guy in Under Siege, too.
Yes. Under Siege 2. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But he always gives that because he's got that like affable kind of like, oh hey.
He always played jerk. He's really good at jerky characters. Yeah.
Right, but he's good at like being the nice guy that does like that turn on a dime.
Yeah.
Because you just don't, until you know he's the bad guy, he's just this nice fella. And all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's not the nice fella.
Interesting little film shot in New York, of course. And yeah. So all right, guys, the next film we have here is, I'm gonna have to lean on you on this, Lacey, is Just the Way You Are, made over $7 million in its theatrical run. Lacey, I'm gonna highlight your DVD there. Hold on. Glad you brought that to the show here. And of course, this and here is what the poster says. She turned a plaster cast into a glass slipper and found the courage to be somebody new. Herself, just the way you are when all else fails. A disabled musician thinks people treat her differently because of her disability, so she goes to a ski resort with a leg cast to test the theory. Of course, stars Kristen McNichol, Michael Ontking, and Kaki Hunter. Kyle, what trivia do you have here?
Filming was delayed for a full year after Christy McNichol developed a chemical imbalance, also reported as an emotional breakdown, and could not continue filming. She recovered in just 2 weeks, but the snowy second half of the film required waiting until the next winter to shoot it. McNichol would once also again portray a flutist in Dream Lover.
So I tried to watch this free. I thought it was free on YouTube, but apparently it wasn't. I had to rent it, so I couldn't find it playing anywhere. But guess who has a physical copy of it? That would be Miss Lacee Adderhold here. Hold up your copy there. I want to see that. You actually have a copy.
Yes.
Appreciate that very, very much there. You're going to have to give us the lowdown on this, Just the Way You Are movie with Kristen McNichol here.
Okay, so this is a movie that is so 80s that the 80s called and wants it back. This movie is about a disabled woman who she's like playing the field, but there's this whole thing where they keep like she's playing the field, like she and her roommate are, like super cute little girls doing their thing, and they're kind of, in the 80s they always said like girls and never said women, that kind of thing. And so she's a flautist and her best friend's a dancer, and they're living in New York and doing the thing and struggle, the struggle is real kind of a deal. And the roommate is like this, obviously this dancer who's, amazing, and she has a leg brace. And it's one of those old school ones where it's connected to the shoe, so she only gets to wear like one pair of shoes all the time. And so the thing is, though, every time you see her meet a new guy, like including Lance Guest and Robert Carradine, who are both also in this film, like every time someone new meets her and she's like, this could be like a thing, and then she stands up and gets up to walk away, and it's like the guy, they do like a close up on the foot, and then the guy's like, oh no, like, and it's just so, it's like, it's very like, it is ableist, and it's a terrible thing. Then you find out that she's got this one guy who's been, proposing to her forever, and her family loves him, and then you meet
the one good guy that she ignores.
No, he wants to marry her because he's gay and he needs a beard, and he wants to take care of her because she's broken and he's gay.
I took a shot and I missed. Sorry.
Right? No, like, you think that's what it's going to be, and then they have this dinner where, like, he's like, I was worried about you or whatever, and why don't you marry me? Like, we could go so far, because he's like an investment banker guy or whatever, which is I guess hyper masculine thing in the 80s, with the giant watch and the ties and whatever. And then she's like, because he catches her like making out with this other guy who doesn't realize that she has this leg situation. And he's like, and she's like, I'm sorry. And he's like, look, if some marriages work out that way, like if you have to like sleep with a random dude every once in a while, that's fine. And she's like, yeah, same here, same with you, but you're just not the same guy, right? And then he goes, and then you go, oh, and then she's like, I think that people would accept you the way you are. And he's like, no, they won't. So he needs a beard, and he thinks that she's broken enough to not have any other options. And that is so terrible. It is the whole movie. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible premise. Okay. And then,
all right.
So then she goes on this flute tour, and she sees a picture, like a poster in an airport, of this woman in a cast wearing like a snow bunny outfit, and she's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, that's totally what I'll do. So she begs a guy in France, a doctor in France, to put a cast on her, who basically says to her, the doctor in me says this is wrong, the Frenchman in me says good thinking. Really? What?
Okay, so I get
it's a whole thing, and then she meets a guy, and
I see why the 80s called and wants it back.
Oh my gosh, it wants it back so bad.
That's funny. So you do not recommend it, I'm guessing?
The thing is, they make it charming, though. Like, the overall story is like,
okay,
they found a way to make it charming, but like back then charming, not now charming.
Does this now hold on? Does this have the famous song "Just the Way You Are" that was referenced in Friends?
No.
Okay, that was from something else. Then,
or
just the way we are. I think that's the song. Never mind.
Right. Yes. Okay. But yeah, Tim Daly is the gay the guy who wants to marry her. Robert Carradine is in it. Michael Ontkeen. I mean, it's got a huge cast for a movie that just says that broken and gay people are bad. That's what this movie is. All right.
Well, that was a lot.
It's a lot.
Impressive review there. I don't know if I want to see it now, but I kind of do. But we'll see.
You kind of have to watch it in order to believe how aggressively.
I've always been a fan of Kristen McNichol and stuff. She's just so cute and adorable. So if it's streaming somewhere for free, I'll check it out. But I'm not buying the DVD. So there you go. All right, guys, let's get into some action here. Oh, Missing in Action came out, of course, here in November of 1984. Made over 22 million. Its theatrical run. Apparently, you can watch it on YouTube for free, but I don't have to do that because I got this little fancy Chuck Norris American Hero Collection. Check that bad boy out right there. And what I love about this collection here, guys, and this is pretty impressive, is that on the back it has Delta Force 2, Missing in Action 2, The Beginning, and Braddock Missing in Action 3, all on this one collection right here. That's pretty impressive. And of course, he was birthed by Canon, which we'll get into in a little bit about that, though.
I just saw Chuck Norris on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and he did a little video. He was like, hey, I'm Chuck Norris. Did you know that I can make a snowman out of water?
I love that he's embraced his Chuck
Amazing.
Norris jokes legacy.
So adorable.
Yeah, and of course he made a quick fun cameo in the Expendables 2, which is great. But Chuck Norris, the war's not over until the last man comes home, Vietnam, 1984. Colonel Braddock launches a mission deep into the jungles of Vietnam to find the POW camp that he escaped from and free the Americans still held captive there. Directed by Joseph Zito, stars Chuck Norris, Emmett Walsh, David Tress, and James Hong. Give us some trivia there, Kyle. What do you got?
Oh, well, so we're going to get a lot of canon film feel here, but this one's very interesting because it ties into that very history even more so because Jean-Claude Van Damme was one of the stuntmen for this movie. His name appears in the credits under stunts performed by as J. Claude Van Damme. This was before his breakthrough performance in Bloodsport, which was in 1988. They actually filmed this simultaneously with Missing in Action 2: The Beginning, which came out in 85, from June until October 1984. This was supposed to be the sequel. However, when the producers realized this film was the better of the two, they simply renamed them and made the other film a prequel to this. This explains why Steve Bing received a credit for characters because he wrote the screenplay for what became the prequel.
That's so weird.
Film.
I love that.
So it's just a canon move. In his autobiography, Chuck Norris stated that he made this film as a memorial honor of his younger brother Wyland, who was killed in the Vietnam War in 1970.
Oh wow!
This was the first film in Chuck Norris's 5-film contract with Canon Films, which paid him $1 million per film, which was agreed to by Mehem Golan against the wishes of his cousin Yoram Globus. Kevin, Canon Films, lots of fun, crazy stuff happening at Canon Films.
Yeah, so I'm just going to tease something right now. If you haven't already seen this, you can get this. And I got this at Walmart. This is the Bombs, Babes, and Blockbusters of Canon Films 10-pack DVD collection here. Check this out right there.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it's got Missing in Action, Cobra, Masters of the Universe, Bloodsport, and Hellhound 1984. But the best thing about this collection, and you can find the documentary streaming somewhere, I don't remember where.
It's on Amazon, I believe.
It has the documentary Electric Boogaloo, the wild untold story of Canon Films. From director Mark Hartley comes a cinematic rampage through the hits and misses produced by the movie-obsessed cousins of Canon Films. So this, I think, was like $20 when I picked it up, guys. It's got all those films, but you got to get it for that documentary. It is amazing. And I'm just going to tease you now, if you're listening and watching this, we're going to be celebrating Canon Films in 2025 here on the Fandom Podcast Network. We got some fun coming up regarding that. Kyle, what is your thoughts on Missing in Action?
I think Lacey has something here, and she looks like...
Oh, Lacey, sorry, go right ahead.
No, it's totally cool. That picture, I'm trying to... Okay, so first of all, like, kudos for the Canadian tuxedo. That's awesome. I'm trying to figure...
I'm sorry, what?
The Canadian tuxedo, jean top, jeans on the bottom.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay, those... Okay, so Chuck Norris is normally... He does a lot of, martial arts because he's the martial arts, he's the fighting guy, right? How does he do any sort of martial arts with jeans that tight?
Because he's Chuck Norris.
Like, what on earth is happening?
There is a funny meme that I shared a while ago called Chuck Norris Action Pants.
Okay.
I don't know what's in his pants, but yeah, I'm sure he might have ripped a few crotches in time to time, but hey, that was his style. That's what he did.
That is impressive. Okay, I don't know anybody who can fit into
Well, Lacey, since you're on right now, you're on the table right now. Give us your thoughts on Missing in Action.
I have not seen Missing in Action.
What?
You know what? Again, it's one of those ones I've seen 2 or 3, and I don't think I've seen this one. I've seen a bunch of Chuck Norris movies, just like I've seen a bunch of Bronson movies, and they kind of go together. So I think I've seen it, but I couldn't tell you anything about it because I watched a bunch of them, and they all kind of go together.
Lacey, really cheap. Got to get these.
I know.
Just watch it. Come on.
I'm trying to go back and go through all of my 80s action fellas. I have recently acquired everything pre-1992 of Steven Seagal.
Well, hold on. We're talking about Chuck Norris right now.
I know.
This right here, I'm sure is cheap on eBay. This is the American Norris American Hero Chuck Norris collection. I'm sure you can find it cheap. It's got all those on there. It is a action masterpiece, and we will be discussing that soon.
When it comes to Chuck Norris, I love things like Sidekicks and
you got to see the Octagon. You got to see Lone Wolf McQuade. You got to see Silent Rage. There's so Code of Silent. I mean, there's so much stuff he's done. It is good. And if you're an action fan, Lacey, you're missing out. You really got to check some of these.
I'm an action fan, but I'm not really like action war. Like war, that's not my thing. Like the action war stuff, not much.
A lot of the stuff he's done is not war films, though. You know that he's really, really good at. Like Lone Wolf McQuade is one of his classics. You know, with Robert Carradine is the villain, and it's really good. Kyle, what are your thoughts on Missing in Action?
So, I'm going to throw this out here, Kevin, and I want your take on this.
Uh-oh.
I think the Braddock character, as far as just knowing that name. That and Lone Wolf McQuade are Chuck Norris's two most well-known characters.
Walker, Texas Ranger.
This is movies, not TV series.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's his most known.
As far as his movies go,
we're talking about movies here.
Okay.
Yeah. These are great films. And the thing is, he did these because of his feelings about the soldiers of Vietnam and that whole situation. That's why he did those. And so it was a passion project for him. And so he takes them very seriously, and they're fun. I mean, they're fun, but there is a message, especially in Missing in Action too, but even in this one. And you could just tell the passion he put into doing these films, even though we talk about, it's a canon film, it's got its craziness, which it does. But there's still a lot of passion for Chuck Norris in this role, in this creation.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot in these films in the 80s, and it started in the 70s, of course, his famous duel with Bruce Lee in the Bruce Lee film. But I think my favorite is probably either Lone Wolf McQuade or the Octagon, the one with ninjas. I love the Octagon in that one. But the thing that's interesting about these films, too, is that he did a lot of his own stunts in these. And when you watch Walker, Texas Ranger, it's so blatantly, obviously, he realized he's getting older, and there's like a stunt man that does a lot of the more, bigger stunts than that. You can see it blatantly. But in these earlier films, he's really good. He's got this certain charisma. And what I liked about his choice of films, he just didn't do action war in this. There was Code of Silence, the one where he's like a good Chicago police officer, and he's going up against corrupt police officer cops and breaking that code of silence to bring the corruption out, And he took chances. He did a lot of fun stuff as well. And this was one of his more iconic ones because a lot of people were returning to Vietnam, and they're trying to bring people back, obviously, that were still prisoners and stuff. But Chuck Norris was just so freaking cool. Kyle, did you say you had a question that you wanted to ask me? Because you didn't.
I wanted to ask you, Kevin. I think this and Lone Wolf McQuade, as far as just you hear the name and you identify him with them, like Lacey said, there's Walker, but we're talking the movies here. Do you think that because there's a lot of his movies where you don't necessarily remember the name of his character, but you do in Missing in Action, and you do remember Lone Wolf McQuade?
Yeah, Lone Wolf McQuade is one of those iconic, like, I'm going to do it alone movies. That's why he was called that. He was he was a marshal or something like that.
Yeah.
And he didn't like working with partners, and it was gritty and violent, and it was really, really, really good movie. But yeah, I would say this. Okay, let me back up a little bit. We have to also talk about Invasion USA, one of his most iconic, movies as well. And it's it's in my top 3. It's Invasion USA, it's Lone Wolf McQuade, and the Octagon. And he's the way that he just dispenses terrors in that. And then, it was one of those things too that was like that. It was that, and then of course being invaded by another country, like Red Dawn. That's another one of those kind of themes that was happening a lot. And we're revisiting Chuck Norris soon. So yeah, there you go. Lacey, check it out. You're missing out. You're an action fan. You guys see this stuff. It's good. All right, next, guys, we got a fantastic cult film here. Night of the Comet made a little over $15 million in its original theatrical run. You can find it on YouTube for free. And it was the last thing on Earth they ever expected. Night of the Comet. A comet wipes out most of life on Earth, leaving two Valley girls fighting against cannibal zombies and a sinister group of scientists. Directed by Tom Eberhardt. Stars Catherine Mary Stewart, Kelly Maroney, Robert Beltran, and Jeffrey Lewis. Kyle, give us some trivia on Night of the Comet.
So when cheerleader Samantha Belmont, played by Kelly Maroney, is playing at the radio station as a disc jockey, she says that she's taking requests from all you teenage mutant comet zombies. This was the working title of the film. She also
would it worked as well if we kept that name?
Yeah, I think possibly, but in a different way. But she also improvised the Uzi line when the weapon jammed for real. Director Tom Eberhardt told the cast to react to any unexpected occurrences in character, since time and budget were tight and they needed to avoid retakes.
That's a funny scene where they both have Mac 10 machine guns and it jams up. She says, "My father would have gave us Uzis."
Yeah, would have gotten an Uzi.
Yeah.
The scenes of an empty Los Angeles were filmed in the morning on normal business days. The shots of the barren city were done quickly while the traffic was held up at stoplights.
Christmas Day. They did it on Christmas Day so that they could specifically make sure that the fewest in the mornings, the fewest cars would be on the streets.
And Kevin, I know this one is probably hits really close to home to you. The movie theater featured in the beginning of the movie is the historic El Rey Theater at 5515 Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90036.
I know exactly where that is. Yeah.
Yep.
So what's interesting, guys, is this movie was off my radar. I did not see it until the last 7 or 8 years. I think when this got released on Blu-ray, maybe. Actually, hold on. I got to give credit. No, I didn't learn about this film until I think our good friend Alex Autry brought it up one time.
Right on.
And I ended up getting it on Blu-ray and watching it. I know they re-released it on 4K recently as well. And so I think I got to give a shout out to Alex. I had not seen it. Does that have the reversible?
Yeah.
It does. That's it. That's the original poster for it. Yeah. Wonderful film. I actually, my wife and I watched this together recently. She had never seen it before. She's like, "I want to see this." She fell asleep about halfway through it though, and she didn't want to finish it. I guess I wasn't doing it for her, but anyway, I enjoyed it. I finished it up, of course, and I love Robert Beltran in this. He's good. Of course, a lot of people know him as Chakotay from Voyager. Lacey, give me your thoughts on Night of the Comet.
It's funny. For a very long time, I thought I had seen this movie, and I don't know what I saw that I thought this movie was, but I watched it for the first time 3 hours ago.
What?
I know. I for the longest time I've been like, no, I've seen that. Of course, I've seen that. I've seen it. Of course, I know I've seen that movie. I don't know what I thought I had seen, but this I watched for the first time 3 hours, and just before I finished it, when I said give me 5 minutes, it's because I was watching the last of the special features. I was watching the interview with Beltran. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what I thought what I had been thinking this movie was, but no, I had not seen this, and it was so much fun. It was silly and kind of goofy, and it was basically the premise of The Walking Dead, with
basically anyone that was indoors survived the effects of this comet.
As long as it was steel, as long as the walls were made of steel.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because there's a lot, and I honestly can't remember for the life of me when The Walking Dead comics came out, because I mean obviously the TV show started much later than
the comics were okay. It came out in the mid to late 2000s when
right. Okay, so this was, I feel like, because you had all of this, it was kind of like an overnight thing. People are showing up doing this. I mean, with the exception of like the comet itself. There's a lot of similarities with Walking Dead, that's a show I very much enjoyed. So this was cool, and lots of people in it that you'll recognize and go, wait, I know that guy. Who was that guy? And then you look at the credits, oh yeah, that guy.
Well, more famously, of course, Catherine Mary Stewart. You guys know her, of course, from The Last Starfighter. And I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole while I was prepping for this because I rewatched it. And if you go on YouTube, Catherine Mary Stewart and Kelly Maroney. Kelly has some other cult classic films like Chopping Mall and stuff like that. So she has her own following as well as Mary Catherine Stewart. But they've been doing the convention circuit together. And I don't remember the name of the convention, but you can look it up on YouTube. Just they're interviewed together. And they talk about this film, and it's maybe about like 25-30 minutes, and it's a really fun interview, and they talk about a lot of the scenes that they were doing. It's fun to see those two together because they have a camaraderie. They're still friends after all these years. Fans love asking them questions and meeting them and getting their autographs and pictures and stuff like that. A cult classic. I got to thank Alex for bringing this to my attention because I was not aware of this film.
I actually met her with Alex. We went to a convention together, like right before the pandemic, and
is that like Fanboy Expo or something like that?
Yeah, we went to Fanboy. It was my first Fanboy Expo. And Alex we met Catherine Mary Stewart, Lance Guest, and Nick Castle. Okay. So that was really fun. They were there for The Last Starfighter, but she had like 2 or 3 on her table. She had 2 or 3 of the CD for the soundtrack. And so I asked Alex, I was like, hey, could you go see so-and-so's line is any lower or any shorter? And so I had her sign that for him. Then I brought it back, and then he had to go back and talk to me like, look, and it was very cool.
Kyle, did you have a comment you want to say?
Well, I would like to talk about the film.
There you go.
First of all, I might have to check your 80s credential cards that you guys didn't see this actually in the 80s.
Okay, well, hold on a sec. Let me address that real quick. You're right, Kyle. It's weird. This really, for whatever reason, just kind of came back into pop culture again with the rise. I think maybe Catherine Stewart's popularity with The Last Starfighter and it getting a re-release on Blu-ray, because I don't remember seeing it DVDs. I don't remember seeing it on the damn video shelves. I don't remember this thing. And not only that, the original poster for this thing is really crappy. Then the re-release of it is a much better character of what we see in the film. So it's not like it stood out at all. And trust me, I camped out on these video shelves. I don't remember seeing this movie anywhere or replaying anywhere.
I remember seeing it and thinking that it was something else.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
So I remember seeing this movie in the 80s, and it was on home video. And this is the benefit of having a half sister whose best friend worked at the video store, because they would constantly be bringing movies home to watch on the weekends. And I saw it for the first time that way. And then it was, and Kevin, I know you didn't. This is part of the reason probably why you missed the initial run of it, like when it was a constant rotation of HBO.
See, I didn't have pay channels when I was a kid. Yeah. And I don't remember this movie making the heavily edited television broadcast either.
It never really did. It never got to that, but it was a HBO staple for several years. And you also have to remember, you had Halley's Comet in 1984, and that was huge. Everybody was going Comet crazy in 84. So you had several Comet movies come out in late 84, early 85 because of the whole Halley's Comet, and so many, there were cults, there were things, it was nuts. And this movie is just it's you talked about the other movie, the 80s want their movie back. This is like a quintessential, you watching this, your time capsule in the 80s. and you know, but it is so much fun. And even though a lot of it is some basic tropes, it's just, there's something about this movie that it is that cult classic. You can turn it on and watch it anytime. It's a little bit cheesy, but you appreciate it because it's that great 80s cheesiness. And it really has had a resurgence, like you said, Kevin. I think not only for Catherine Mary Stewart, but just because of the generation getting old enough to introduce it to their children, and it kind of catching on to the 80s nostalgia cult classic status.
And in our defense too, Kyle, by the way, if you're going to put me on trial again, my defense too is a lot of these films, a la, Beastmaster and the original V series, inside joke. But a lot of these films are making resurgence because they weren't released on a DVD. It was they were stuck in VHS void basically.
Yeah.
or came out on DVD briefly, and a lot of it has to do with distribution rights, music rights, and a lot of them have been coming back into pop culture. People go, "Oh my God, I remember that! I saw it for the first time in the theater, or I saw it on HBO," and it's coming into a lot of us that never got around to seeing these and never heard of them. And that's why I love doing Time Warp, because I'm discovering a lot of these for the first time. Like
Yeah.
No Small Affair was another one. I had never heard of that film until recently. And I'm like, well, I got to get that one, So it's weird how a lot of this stuff is coming back into the culture, and it's our job, damn it, to make sure people remember it or learn it for the first time.
that is why we're here. But like I said, too, in your defense, and that was me just busting. But in your defense, this was one of those '80s films that really didn't make it into the it's going to air on TBS or WGN or TNT or something like that. That it wasn't even one of those ones that surprisingly wasn't like Joe Bob Briggs, Joe Bob Briggs, Monster Vision, or Rhonda Shear Up All Night, and this would have fit in in those categories. It just didn't hit that cycle, and I do wonder if there was music rights issues or some other things with it. But yeah, it's definitely one of those ones that gets a little bit lost. You talked about Beastmaster, and when I was so surprised when you told me you hadn't seen Beastmaster, because that was in a cable replay a lot, like on TNT and TBS.
Yeah. And like I said, I've said we never had HBO. We never had pay channels as a kid, so I never saw a lot of these.
But no, definitely an '80s classic and a lot of fun to revisit.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So
Well,
I would love to see this on the big screen. What was that, Lacey?
And I'm excited to listen to the commentary. This is a DVD Blu-ray combo pack. So I watched the DVD earlier, and the Blu-ray has a commentary on it. So
nice.
I'll be listening to that shortly.
All right, guys. I added this film. This is an interesting little film. You can find it on YouTube, and this is called Raw Courage. I didn't have any theatrical information on it, but it stars Ronnie Cox, Art Hindle, Lois Childs, Emmett Walsh, who we just talked about. He co-starred in Missing in Action, and William Russ. They started out running for glory and ended up running for their lives. Raw Courage. Find it or die. Marathon runners are taken captive in desert by right-wing militias. Directed by Robert L. Rosen. Writers Mary Cox and Ronnie Cox. Stars Ronnie Cox and Art Lindell and Emmett Walsh. Kyle, it's a very important movie for Ronnie Cox. I think you got some trivia about that.
Yeah, the film was a passion project for him, and of course he wrote the script with his wife Mary. But this film had some interesting problems too. According to Ronnie Cox, he screened the film to Oscar winner Jerry Goldsmith, who really liked it and was very interested in the assignment. However, the production company ran out of money and the fee of $50,000 that would have secured Goldsmith's services. And then after the film had wrapped, there was a major rift between producers Robert L. Rosen and Sandy Howard. It was so bad, Ronnie Cox had to testify against them at an arbitration hearing in regards to who was going to be in charge of the rights of this film. When you add all this together, this film barely got a release, because I'll be honest with you, I don't remember. I've never heard of this film until.
I'm a big Ronnie Cox fan, and he's of course famous for being the good captain, of course, in the Beverly Hills Cop movies, and then we get him as a villain turn as Cohagen in Total Recall, and of course in RoboCop. And then of course we covered him recently, Kyle, on Star Trek. He had a great 2-part episode in Star Trek TNG. Where he played a hard-ass captain. And I was kind of curious about this. And basically, you can find it on YouTube. You can watch it for free. And he and his buddies are basically marathon runners, and they're training to run to a specific place. I think it's filmed in Arizona, if I remember correctly, or New Mexico. And everyone is waiting for them at the end, but they have to go through this desert area. And they come across these wannabe militia guys that are, the head of it is Emmett Walsh. And they come across them, and they get a little overzealous, and they do some stupid stuff, and then they're hunted down by these guys, and I think they lose one of their friends, or one of their friends gets injured pretty bad, and they eventually escaping them. But it's an interesting film about these guys trying to outrun these guys and outsmart them, and knowing their way around through this desert that they've mapped and stuff, and these idiot guys who trying to do their own, military outside of the military and the stupid things that they do. Rodney Cox shines in this. I'll be honest with you. He's really good in this. I can see why it was a passion project for him. Not one I would watch on a repeat, but I do recommend watching it just for Rodney Cox and him making this, a passion project for himself. Anyone seen this?
No, but I imagine this is probably right after this was released is when they started putting men on bicycles and motorcycles to follow marathoners to make sure that they weren't,
Yeah, that was the one thing came up. It's like I couldn't tell if they had run this track before because they're basically going on like these open roads, and then they go off the cement road onto the dirt roads. And I'm like, yeah, if you're gonna train and do stuff, you might want to go where places aren't where creepy guys are trying to be paramilitary dudes. So yeah. All right, guys, let's hit the next film here. This is Supergirl. Came out, of course, in November of 1984. Made a little over $14 million for the producers of the Superman movies, of course. Her first great adventure. After a power source for the community of Krypton survivors is accidentally whisked to Earth, Kal-El, cousin of Superman and niece to Jor-El, chooses to go to Earth to find it and bring it back. Upon her arrival, she becomes just as powerful and as super as her cousin, but encounters dangerous battles and unexpected obstacles when a mean-spirited woman who practices rituals of the occult takes the power source for herself and uses it to cause destruction and attempt zenith human status. Of course, guys, director was Jono Schwartz. Writer David Odell, stars Helen Slater, Faye Dunaway, Peter O'Toole, and Mia Farrow. Kyle, what have you got for trivia? And let's show off those DVDs, Lacey. Oh yeah.
Okay, this is the limited edition numbered 9505 of 50,000.
Really fancy. Look at that.
It's one of the silver double cases that has the middle piece in it, like that does the middle piece kind of thing.
Yeah, those classic old school 2-disc holders. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it comes with the regular version, which has the bright red, and then it comes with the director's cut.
That's with an extra 10 minutes.
Yes,
as mine says, the European theatrical version with 10 minutes of footage not seen in North American theaters.
And it came with a little booklet that's like, I don't know, 15 pages.
Nice. Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, give us some trivia first, and we'll give our thoughts on the movie.
Christopher Reeve bowed out just before filming began. He was slated to make a cameo as Superman, but was unavailable. The film still features a picture of Reeve in costume in a brief cameo. The film's opening credits cost almost $1 million to shoot. That's a big chunk of money for opening credits in the 80s. A film container simply stating the words "do not use" was discovered at Pinewood Studios in London. The negative and sign contained missing footage that was later used to create the director's cut edition of the film. Anchor Bay subsequently released this version on special edition DVD, limited to 50,000 copies, Lacey.
Hey, wait, I know someone who might have one of those, Kyle.
Yeah. Warner Archive Collection, an offshoot label dedicated to manufactured on-demand releases, would later release it as a bonus disc DVD for the film's Blu-ray debut in 2018. Mark McClure, who played Jimmy Olsen, is the only actor to reprise his role from any of the Superman films. And also, almost 85% of this film was shot on a giant sound stage at Pinewood Studios.
So, guys.
Yes.
I have thoughts.
I thought I've seen this movie all the way through.
Nice.
But after rewatching it, I don't remember if I have. I felt like I've seen parts of it so many times because I do remember this going to television broadcasts from time to time.
That's what you did. You pulled a Lacee because I thought I'd seen it out of the comic.
Yeah. And so I felt like I've watched it for the first time recently for this podcast. And I did a post about it on social media, and I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was fun and campy, but a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, that thing is so bad, blah, blah, blah." I think it would have done better if Christopher Reeve would have done a cameo, and I'm kind of upset that he did not, because that would have been really nice. But I thought Peter O'Toole, I think he was really good in this as well. But I don't know if I'll watch it again. Maybe I will. I thought it was interesting. It was fun. Helen Slater, just so adorable though. She was great in this. What I liked about it though was that her undercover is a black-haired high school kid. I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, that actually plays right out of the comics too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Kyle, what are your thoughts on Supergirl?
The movie that should.
Oh wait, hold on. Did you hear that, Lacey? He started with a.
Well, because here's my feelings on Supergirl. The movie that should have been a lot more super than what it was. First of all, Helen Slater is one of the most underrated, beautiful women of the 80s, in my opinion. Especially, she's good looking in this. You give me her in Secret of My Success, and
Billie Jean, man.
Legend of Billie Jean.
Legend of Billie Jean.
This movie has an amazing cast in it. It's riding on the coattails of the immense popularity of Christopher Reeve as Superman, and it just missed the mark somehow. And I'm not saying it's a bad film, but in a way, it's a dull film. The action is not the best. The performances, you feel like there's just several of these bigger names that are kind of mailing it in a little bit. Faye Dunaway is pretty over the top. It's a very interesting performance from her in this. It needed Christopher Reeve, even in just a cameo. Having Jimmy Olsen back, Mark McClure as Jimmy Olsen, kind of gave it some connection, but I think it just, people were wanting a little something more with this and a little bit more tie-ins to the Superman film. And then Lacey, it even has a Grease 2 connection for you in it, because the actress who played Sharon in Grease 2 plays Lucy Lane, Lois Lane's little sister in this film.
Yes,
there was. I think the other issue with it is there's been so many good Supergirl stories in the comics, and there's been some phenomenal animated Supergirl versions of Supergirl done, and even how they handled Supergirl in Smallville really has made this movie outshine. But Helen Slater it became kind of iconic with the Supergirl role in her own way, that when DC put the Flash on, they included her in those scenes of alternate Earths, and how important she became for this role. And she's still very well known for this role, even though she's done many other things. It's wearing that S is something special, even today.
Lacey, your thoughts on Supergirl?
I think that a superhero is only as good as their villain is dangerous. And I don't think Selena had her goal was, it was self-serving as opposed to like evil, dastardly going to do the bad thing. You know, I mean, it just seemed too small of a, I know that sounds weird, but it seems like too small of a story. Like Selena as the bad guy, that's not, I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, Faye, she was over the top and I think she was pulling like full on, villain vibes on a story that needed a little bit more meat to it. I just, if there had been, I'm not opposed to like an origin story for Supergirl. That's great. And that could have been, like with Smallville, when you start Smallville, you start small, you do little day-to-day things, whatever. They could have done a full origin story with her and had, something involving, Jimmy Olsen or something. And it would have been, at least it would have just been classified as the origin story, as opposed to having a villain that didn't really pop.
Yeah, it was, and also too, it took place in a small town, so it was small town problems as well. And if the threat was more global, it might have been a little more interesting and stuff. Yeah, good call on the self-indulgent version of the needs of the villain. Kyle?
One other thing too, and I think this is where Supergirl borrowed a lot of things from the Superman films. Her to kind of discovering her powers, very in some ways reminiscent when the 3 Kryptonian villains show up in Superman 2 and start discovering their powers. It's like, and I don't think one of the things that they didn't really play up enough on was her actual Kryptonian heritage. They deal with it a little bit at the beginning of the movie, and then it kind of goes to the wayside. And like you said, Kevin, it's all in a small town. It doesn't feel like it has this huge Supergirl, Superman should be dealing with worldwide threats, not the little small town threats.
Yeah, you know what's interesting though? I'll be perfectly honest with you. My favorite parts of the movie were not her as Superwoman and dealing with the villain. It was her in high school with her friend. Those were the more entertaining part. But I think it would have been serviced better if it had Christopher Reeve came in and there was some connective tissue there and stuff. So, but I still enjoy it. Like I said, I'm a fan of Helen Slater. So, all right, guys, we got one more for you here for November of 1984, and you're gonna go, wait a minute, this didn't get a theatrical release. Well, it kind of did, and we're gonna talk about Caravan of Courage, Ewok's Adventure here. And I'm going to showcase my little double feature of both the Ewoks film here, Caravan of Courage and the Battle for Endor. Battle for Endor is my personal favorite. But this movie did get a limited, I think it was in Germany or something like that. It did get a theatrical release when it first came out. And, if you're a Star Wars fan, a lot of people will scoff at this film. Some people like it. It's a guilty pleasure. With Wicket, the Ewok and his friends agree to help two shipwrecked human children, Mace and Sindel, on a quest to find their parents. Of course, writers George Lucas and Bob Carew, stars Eric Walker, Warwick Davis, Finola Flanagan, Aubrey Miller. Kyle, give us some trivia on the Ewok movie, Caravan of Courage.
The film was shot entirely in Marion County, home of Skywalker Ranch. Much of the action was shot in a public parkland called Roy's Redwoods, which contains 300-year-old sequoias, the oldest in the area.
I got to correct you there. It's Marin County, if you're from the area too, and it's also very close to where they did a lot of the scenes for the Endor shots, of course, for Return of the Jedi. And a lot of people will go there trying to find those famous filming locations.
The Ewok language was based on Tibetan language. Oh. The film actually takes place between the events of Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, and Episode 6, The Return of the Jedi. Joe Johnston, chief concept designer on the original Star Wars trilogy, was also the production designer on this movie. He not only created the overall look of the Ewoks with George Lucas, he also penned a children's book, The Adventures of Tebow. And not Tim.
Tebow. Yeah, not Tebow. Not Tim Tebow. Tebow. I think Tebow was the warrior one.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember watching these when these came out. Yes, they were corny, they were cheesy, but it was Star Wars. And I've got the two DVD thing here. Kyle, I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts on let's just talk about both of them if you want.
Yeah. So let's start with Caravan of Courage, which wasn't what it was originally titled. It was called the Ewok Adventure.
Yes.
And it wasn't named Caravan of Courage until much later. But this was an absolutely huge deal at the time because we were getting Star Wars on television.
That's buddy.
Good. And if you remember correctly, the Ewok Adventure aired over 2 nights. They broke it into 2 parts when it initially aired as a special. But everybody was so just, it's Star Wars, it's Star Wars, it's Star Wars. And they were pulled into it. And then when they did the Battle for Endor later, it wasn't quite as popular, but it was still strong. The thing about this, though, Kevin, is that when you go back and look at it now, and yes, they are a little cheesy, they are a little corny, that we also had to maybe look at some warning signs with George with this, because we started seeing George kind of like, he's getting maybe a little too kiddie with some of this stuff. There's some really cool creatures in Caravan of Courage, but I'm gonna be honest with you. Watching it now, the little girl drives me up the wall.
Sindel, yeah.
Sindel. Yeah. I mean, it's not her fault, but it's just she's so young and how she is. It's just it's sometimes like a little bit of fingers on the chalkboard.
He was basically making some movies for his kids too.
Yeah.
So yeah. But at this time too, we were also getting the animated Ewoks, and also my favorite, the animated droid series as well, the limited series as well. Lacee, have you seen any of these?
No, I have not. I'm a big fan of big screen Star Wars. I am struggling to maintain to stay up to date. I haven't seen any of the forget the stuff that came out in the 80s. I can't even keep up with the stuff that's on Disney Plus now. There's 47 TV shows. I can't figure it out. I can't. I'm a film gal when it comes to Star Wars.
Well, what's interesting, guys, is these came up in the news recently because as of this year, in a few weeks, we're going to get the release of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. And some news came out that a character animal by the name of Teak, who I believe was in the Battle of Endor, this really funny character, fuzzy creature that runs around really fast. And I actually liked him. I remember Camille liked him too when we were watching this. And I was introducing the Ewok movies to her. And apparently he's going to make an appearance in the last episode. That's the rumor. So we'll find that out.
Okay.
Well, that is it, guys. That is it for the movies of November of 1984. We did have a couple of cutting room movies here we did not get to. De Niro and Streep in Falling in Love, Night Patrol, and Bad Manners, starring Martin Mull and Karen Black. Which you have the Night Patrol on a was it a 2 DVDs movie set there, right, Lacey?
Oh no, it's two movies on one disc.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
This is a $6 double feature, and I'm not super sure that we're going to be able to claim that it's worth that $6.
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually started watching Night Patrol, and I had to fast forward through it. It was pretty bad. It was so low budget.
Yeah, it was so bad, and everything. And there's like so much like weird gay bashing type stuff, and like there's a lot of not okay things. Let's
leave it at that.
Yeah.
So yes, this has been November 1984. We're getting near the end here, guys, of the movies of 1984. And next month, we got some bangers here in this one. I'm actually excited for this. We have Beverly Hills Cop, 2010, City Heat, Cotton Club, Dune, 1984, Passage to India, Runaway, Starman, The River, Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo, Birdie, The Flamingo Kid, Johnny Dangerously, Mickey and Maude, Protocol, and Mrs. Sothel. Yeah, I don't know. That might make it to the cutting room floor. We'll see.
Mrs. Sothel. Yeah.
Sothel, okay. This is Time Warp, FPN, of course, Fandom Flashback Show on the Fandom Podcast Network. I want to give a shout out here to TeePublic. If you like what you're watching and you want to support us, head over to TeePublic and look up the Fandom Podcast Network. Lacey, let's show off our shirts. I'm
so excited. I got mine in purple.
I love it. It goes good with the logo. Looking very good there.
That middle color right there just kind of really blends nicely.
But guys, give us a little support there. We get a little kickback that helps keep the lights on here every time you purchase a Fandom Podcast Network shirt. We'd appreciate that. But let's go ahead and close things out here, guys. This is the Fandom Podcast Network, and please check out the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube if you're watching this video. Thank you very much. And if you're listening to this, thank you as well. But also check out the video. We appreciate that. Master feed for all of our audio podcasts can be found at fpnet.podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all the major podcast platforms. We're also on Facebook, email, Instagram, Twitter, and we are also now on Blue Sky as well. I think I've got a little thing here about that. How can we find you guys? Kyle?
Of course, you can find me all over the place here on the Fandom Podcast Network, including all of our social media sites, including the Fandom Podcast Network Facebook page, the Twitter feed. And if you're looking for me more on a personal level, you can find me on Facebook, Kyle Wagner, or you can also find me on Twitter at AKyleW or on Blue Sky at AKyleW. And you can find me on Threads and Instagram at AKyleFandom.
Lacey, you're Lacey Pants everywhere, aren't you?
I'm Lacey Pants everywhere except for the Instagram, where I am the Lacey Pants.
The Lacey Pants.
Yes. So don't forget Letterboxd.
Yes, Letterboxd, yeah. And I am Spartan_Phoenix on all of the socials there. And on Blue Sky at Spartan Phoenix. And of course, you can find me on the Fandom Podcast Network. Lacey, thank you so much as always for this time travel journey. Appreciate the dedication you put in there.
Hooray, hurrah.
Kyle, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
It's always a pleasure. I'm going to go try to get some sleep now because it's been a few days and I'm starting to dream that I'm part of the Caravan of Courage.
Well, watch out for Freddy because he might kill you for that. So there you go. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys tuning in each and every month and appreciate to hear some feedback from you if you got any feedback. Until next time, we will see you back in time.